Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I welcome you to the series History, Science, and Faith in Islam. In today's session, we'll cover the historic Battle of Ain Jalut near Jerusalem that stopped the advance of Mongols into Arabia and Egypt. Not since the Battle of Badr had the Islamic world stood face to face with extinction as it did at the Battle of Ain Jalut. Just as the Prophet had triumphed at Badr 600 years earlier, the Mamluks triumphed over the combined armies of the Mongols, the Crusaders, and the Armenians at the Battle of Ain Jalut. The Muslim world survived by a margin that was as small as any allowed by history to any civilization. As the Mongols turned back from Central Europe after overrunning Hungary and Poland, it became obvious to the Christian powers that Western Europe was safe. At the Council of Lyons in 1245, they resolved to seek an alliance with the Mongols against the Muslims. In 1246, one of the delegations under John de Plano Carpini reached Karakoram, the Mongol capital, and made representations to Kuyuk, the great Khan. Two of Kuyuk's ministers were Christian, and John was received cordially. A second delegation under Anselm, a Dominican priest, was dispatched in 1246-47. Louis, King of France, sent a third delegation under William of Roubracois in 1253. Hayton, King of Armenia, represented himself and traveled to Karakoram in 1254. The Christian overtures to the Mongols paid off and were rewarded with promises of military help. The Christian population in the major cities was spared even as the Mongols continued to slaughter the Muslims. For instance, while Baghdad was ravaged and pulled to the ground, the Christian population of Baghdad gathered under the local cathedral and was spared. Hulagu, the destroyer of Baghdad, had several wives, of whom Dogus Khatun, a Nestorian Christian, was his chief wife. So enthralled were the Christians at their initial success that Pope Alexander IV wrote to Hulagu in 1260, expressing his pleasure that the latter was disposed to accept the Christian faith. The news of the fall of Baghdad in 1258 was received with great joy in Christendom, who saw in it an opportunity to redress the loss of Jerusalem. It was during this period that the Fatimid assassins sent a delegation to Henry III of England, asking for his help to protect them from the Mongols. The reply from the Bishop of Winchester was curt: "Let those dogs devour each other and be utterly wiped out, and then we shall see founded on their ruins the universal Catholic Church." The Christian Mongol axis continued its aggression against Muslim territories. While the Mongols devastated Asia, the Crusaders continued their onslaught on the eastern Mediterranean and North Africa. In 1219, a German army invaded Egypt, occupied Damietta, and proceeded towards Cairo. The Egyptians allowed the invaders to enter the delta, then opened the dikes on the Nile, trapping and drowning the German army. In 1261, the French attempted an invasion of North Africa, while Spain and Portugal were militarily active on the Moroccan coast. Meanwhile, Hulagu followed up the sack of Baghdad with the capture of Iraq and Syria. After consulting with his astrologers, He established his base in Maraga. The Atabek Seljuk Shah was captured near Shiraz and was beheaded. In 1260, Aleppo was stormed and its population was put to death. Damascus surrendered without a fight. The Mongol commander Kitboga, the Armenian king Hayton, and the Crusader king Bohemond of Antioch marched together in the streets of the ancient Umayyad capital and forced the Muslim inhabitants of the city to kneel before the cross. Summons were issued to Qutuz, the Mamluk Sultan of Egypt, so to surrender or face annihilation. The choice before the Mongols was stark indeed. They knew that either surrender or a loss in battle would mean annihilation, and the last bastion of Islamic culture would be destroyed. Although Delhi was as yet safe from the Mongols, Islam had barely established itself on the plains of Hindustan by the year 1260. Jerusalem, Mecca, and Medina would be taken. Summons went forth from Sultan Qutuz for a jihad under General Baybars. The response was overwhelming, and a motivated Muslim army advanced through the Sinai towards Palestine to meet the invaders. The Mamluks were a Turkish tribe who had made their home in the islands of the Nile. Hence they are sometimes called Bahri Mamluks. The word Mamluk derives its origin from the word malaka, that is to own. During the 9th and 10th centuries, slave trade was brisk along the river Volga in today's Russia and around the Caspian Sea. The Vikings, namely the Swedes, were the primary vehicles for this trade. In the 9th and 10th centuries, the Vikings were the imperial power around the Baltic Sea. They conducted raids deep into what is today Russia and Germany, as well as the Slavic lands of the Balkans, captured slaves, and sold them to Jewish and Muslim merchants. These slaves were adopted by the Turkish sultans, often married princesses of the royal households, and they rose to become rulers themselves. Thus it was that the transcendence of Islam elevated slaves to kings. In the 13th century, both Egypt and India were ruled by Mamluk, that is, slave dynasties. The armies of Baybars met the combined armies of the Mongols, the Crusaders, and the Armenians near Nazareth in Ain Jalut in September 1261. A great battle ensued. The Mamluk right flank charged against the invaders and forced it back. But the Mongols counterattacked on the left, and the Mamluks hesitated. General Baybars took charge, and a battle cry went forth for the defense of Islam. The enemies were routed. Kitboga was killed. Hayton, king of Armenia, and Bohemond, king of Antioch, fled. The Mongols were pursued to Aleppo and destroyed. Egypt, and with it Hijaz and Palestine, were saved. The dark spell that the Mongols had cast across the Eurasian continent was broken. Ain Jalut was undoubtedly one of the decisive battles in human history, comparable in its importance with the Battle of Tours and the Battle of Plassey. It marked the farthest advance of the Mongols across Eurasia. With the defeat at Ain Jalut, Christendom lost its hope for recovery of Jerusalem, and its hold on the Syrian coastline was made untenable. The Armenians receded to their mountain strongholds in the Caucasus Mountains. Had the Mamluks lost, Cairo would have met the same fate as Baghdad. The cross would have supplanted the crescent, and the shamanist Mongol would have ruled over the sacred cities of Makkah and Medina. Upon his return from Ain Jalut, Baybars displaced Sultan Qutuz. He invited a relative of slain Khalifa al-Mustasim to Cairo and re-established the Abbasid Khilafat in Egypt. There, the temporal seat of Sunni Islam stayed until it was displaced by the Ottomans in 1517 and moved to Istanbul. This concludes our session on the historic Battle of Ain Jalut. In the next session, inshallah, we'll examine how the spiritual message of Islam penetrated the hearts of the Mongols and how the precursor. This concludes our session on the historic Battle of Ain Jalut. In the next session, inshallah, we'll examine how the spiritual message of Islam penetrated the hearts of the Mongols and how the persecutors of Muslims were transformed and became the standard bearers of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.